Hello, I'm Jen. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how I personally render my art. Small disclaimer, this is probably going to be my first ever video I'll be uploading to YouTube on my new art channel. All my socials and links will be in the description, so please consider leaving a like, follow, and share. Today I'll be doing a tutorial on how I generally render and shade skin on my OCs. I've been asked a few times what tips I have or if I can give a tutorial, so thanks to those who discovered me on TikTok. You asked and you shall receive. I do want to let you guys know that this is more of a walkthrough than an actual tutorial. I just don't want to overcomplicate all my steps and overwhelm you all. Feel free to leave a comment and tell me what you would have done differently. So this is a new OC of mine and we're going to call her Lucy. As you can see, I've already put in the flat colors and I still have my sketch ready here for reference if I need it. I don't do it all the time, but I do sometimes block out some of the shadows in the face so it's easier to kind of see how it'll look before I start the clean line work. So here you'll see that I'm making an easy shape fill-in where that shadow under the nose is. I always start with the nose, I don't know why, but to me it's like starting from the center and working my way out. That and also the nose is just the easiest to start with. You'd want to make sure you're occasionally flipping your canvas to make sure everything is proportionately correct. This is mostly important during like the sketching and line work phases of your art, so use it to your advantage. For the eyes, I typically set my brush settings to have post-correction and fade tips on both ends so that I can get like this nice crescent shape on the eyelids. You don't exactly want to outline the eye itself, you're only shading the creases or folds on the eye. If you're shading a head that's at an angle, you want to make sure that you put your shadows in places the light doesn't hit. In my case, I don't really have a main light source, so I try to put shadows in the deeper parts of the face, like the inner eye, the lids, or the eyebrows. Okay, so this is how the eyes look so far. Sometimes if your character has makeup, like lipstick or just toned lips, you'd want to also add a shadow on the lips, more so on top. That's because usually the upper lip is protruding over the bottom lip, so naturally there would be a shadow there and a smaller shadow casted over the bottom lip. I didn't really need to do this since this character will have lipstick, but I thought I would show you how it would work anyway. Don't forget the little shadow underneath the bottom lip. I use the faded brush tips to get that crescent shape again. That finishes the first layer. It should have eyes, nose, lips, and or brows shaded. On a new layer, this will be the shadows on the neck. I'm going to turn off the faded tips of my brush, and I'm going to keep post-correction on so my lines aren't too wobbly. You want to make sure that you have a nice thick shadow underneath, following the direction the chin is facing. Remember to follow some of the lines of clothing. You don't have to outline all of it, but emphasize where the light is not necessarily touching. Now another new layer for under the hairline. It'll be the same thing here for under the hair. You don't want to completely outline each individual strand of hair. However, depending on what kind of hairstyle your character has, there will be some instances where yes, you can outline each strand. But you also want to be mindful of where the shadows are being cast from. If you want to follow the shape of the hair strands, you can turn on either side of the faded tips. They don't have to be big shadows either. Again, I don't have a main light source, so it'll depend on the hairstyle and light sources that you have. The face is round. You can also have a very thin shadow line going down along the side of the face to give that sort of 3D illusion or to show that the face is round and has dimension. You might not even see much of a difference right now, but when we get to the other layers, you'll see why and how it'll make a nice difference. Okay, and that's the layer done for the hairline. It's very simple and straightforward. You should now have a total of 3 layers. That's for the hairline, the neck, and the middle face. If you'd like, you can touch up on some spots like the lips, and you can very gently erase so it's not so bold, and it sort of blends in a little better compared to the skin tone. Again, it's not very important in my case, since I'll later have lipstick covering this area anyway. Sometimes the lines are also a little too rough-edged, so I like to very occasionally blend out some of the ends of those strokes. It's alright if you don't do this step, sometimes it looks fine if left as is. This is mostly just a personal preference of mine. Moving on, you can now merge those 3 layers together, not including the base color of the skin. It's important all these layers stay clipped to that base layer. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do hands and fingers as well. These might be the easiest to do compared to doing the face. You want to start by blocking out hidden fingers completely, such as this little pinky. It makes sense to do it because, 1, it's behind the fingers already in view. And Lucy wears these like very puffy sleeves, so 2, the base of these fingers would be all in shadow anyway. Same thing between the fingers, you want to put a thin stroke between them to show that there is another finger in front of it. The pointer finger would also have a small shadow just below it to show that there's no light coming from under the hands. That's because they're facing downwards. You can also turn on the faded tips and add these little crescents to look like knuckles or joints on the fingers. I'm going to go ahead and do the other hand as well, so that we can move on to the next steps. Okay, now that that is done, you can merge that with the other layer as well. You should have 1 layer besides the base. What you're going to do now is duplicate that same layer, so now you'll have 2. With that second layer, you're going to go into settings, and you're going to open the Gaussian blur effect. Now you can adjust the slider and blend out the layer, just enough to make the skin appear more smooth and give it that rendered effect. So now the character would look like this. I would also check the fingers and make sure nothing looks over-blended. You can always softly erase if it does appear that way. What I like to do next is change that now blended layer to a different, more warmer color. And that's because skin is not always evenly the same color. I usually go for a more yellowish kind of tone, since it makes the colors stand out a little more. And I learned this trick from studying the animation of a certain anime. The after effects they used always had this yellowish undertone, and I see many artists who adopt that same style, and they use it in their own art, which I do too. Okay, next, before we finish this layer, I like to erase some of the color blended over the nose. I do this because, like other features, the nose protrudes from the face. It'll probably be the most highlighted area while rendering, so it's best to try not to have too much shadow over it. On a new layer, you're going to change the blending mode and set it to multiply. This will darken the underlayer by multiplying the colors over it, so I don't have to change the current color I have now. It'll just look like this. Besides, you can still change the color before or after, like I'll do to make the darker shadows more warmer. Just like before, I'll adjust the settings on my brush and emphasize the creases in her face. You don't want to go all out with the multiply layer because, well, you already done the shadows for her face. This layer is just to darken the deeper areas where you think there should be darker shadows. This would include the inner eye, under the chin, and the hairline. You can do nostrils too if you want, but you want to be sure that they don't look too bold and stand out compared to the rest of the face. Don't forget the little divots on the cupid's bow and under the bottom lip. It'll be the same for the fingers as well. You would in this case just want to emphasize the sleeves' shadow over the hands. And you can also be a little more generous with the blending on this layer, but you still want to keep a few rough edges here and there. Like I said before, I'm going to adjust the colors of the layer just to a more pinkish color, or maybe something with more blue or purple undertones. You can definitely play around with it and see what looks best to you. Next, we're going to make another layer, set it to multiply. And we're going to switch to a soft airbrush tool for this. I want the brush to be big enough to cover the eyes. You can use the same color, but I like using more red tones. I like to darken these areas because the eye sits in a socket. It should look like the eyes are sitting in the skull and not like the face is just flat. Okay, and then afterwards, you'll set the layer's opacity down by about 50%. Now on a new normal layer, we'll do cheeks or blush. And you don't necessarily have to do this, but I like to because it actually helps with the shadows of the nose, which you'll be able to see in the end. You'll want to pick a nice nude color, and it could be between the red to orange tones. Just find something you think will look best with the other colors that you used. Once you find a nice color, I chose this pink one, you're going to want to make these like rounded triangle shapes. I switched to my lasso tool and I circle just one of the cheeks. Like before, I'm going to open the blur effects, but this time I'm going to use the motion blur. Now you can adjust which way the color blurs, and you want it to go in the direction the face is angled, so try pointing it towards the corners of the mouth. Afterwards, I take the selection and I stretch the color over the whole cheek. I try to make the edges connect to the corners of the eyes. Then repeat that on the other side. Now before I blend anything, I want to make sure that I erase any color that got on the nose. Remember, the nose shouldn't have much shadows on it. Okay, and then here I like to erase just a little circle beside the nostril, and that helps with the illusion of like an actual nose on her face. After this, you can go ahead and blend or erase to your liking. I tend to follow along the cheekbones down to the mouth. And then once you're done, I usually set the layer opacity down by 20%. Now we're almost done. We're going to start on the lips. You're going to make another new layer. And I'm going to check my sketch and see if I can follow what I drew sort of as a guideline. Now again, you can generally pick any color you want for this. I'm going for another natural looking pink. It probably won't look exactly like what I had for the sketch. That's because some proportions tend to change when compared to how the line work was drawn. So now I'm going to unclip this layer just temporarily because it's going to act as the base layer for the lips. Like I mentioned before, the top lip usually protrudes more. So with a slightly darker color, you can color in the top lip and it'll look like a proper shadow. You can go ahead and alter the color or blend very softly. On a new layer, I'm setting it to multiply. And all I'm doing here is darkening the middle line and the corners of the mouth and blending. I'm making a new layer and setting the blending mode to add, and then just adding a little bit of highlight on the plump parts of the lips and blending them in. Now for my favorite part, another layer set to add glow, and I can add very small highlights to make it look glossy. Now you can merge all those layers together and clip it back to the rest of the others once you think you're satisfied. Now you might be thinking that we're all finished. No. I'm going to make a new layer and set it to add. And what I'm doing next is adding the highlights on the skin, specifically on the edges. You want the color to be light enough that it's lighter than the base color, but also not too light that is just plain white. You want to at least be able to see some sort of undertone color from it. Some people might like to add some sort of highlight here on the nose. I don't do it that often, but if you do, make sure you follow the bridge of the nose. Don't forget about the hands or any other part of the skin. You can also put it at the tip of the nails to give it that French tip design. Okay, now I can finally say that this is how it should look in the end. Now I can merge all of these layers into one, and that's including the base layer. Here's the before and after. While I'm still drawing this art of Lucy, I'll try and do some other tutorials of how to render, say, eyes or hair, maybe even clothes, but let me know in the comments what you would like to see next. For those who would like to see all of my work, my main platform is Instagram. I've recently joined Bluesky as well. Links to both will be in the description. I hope you enjoyed my video and consider checking out more of my other work. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.